Tesla just leaked the Model 2 Senior Edition with 3 changes nobody saw coming. Softer suspension tuned for comfort, not speed. Simplified screens designed for aging eyes. And corrosion protection engineered to survive 200,000 miles in salt-heavy states. But here's what's strange. Why would Elon deliberately make a car slower and simpler when competitors are chasing performance specs? What does Tesla know about real ownership costs that's forcing this complete strategy shift? The answer isn't what you think. The answer starts in places most people never think about until it's too late. Their driveway, their garage floor, that growing rust spot underneath they keep ignoring. Look, over 40% of American drivers live within 50 miles of a coast or in states where winter means salt-covered roads for months. That's 130 million people watching their cars slowly dissolve from underneath. And here's what breaks my heart about this industry. Every automaker knows it's happening. They've known for decades. They just build cars that last exactly long enough to survive the warranty period, then shrug when the frame starts crumbling at year 9. Tesla looked at this and apparently decided to do something completely different with the Model 2 Senior Edition. They're engineering it to survive 3 feet of standing water for 30 minutes. Not for some adventure commercial where you're crossing rivers. For that intersection near your house that floods every time it storms hard. The one you avoid because you're terrified of what water damage would do to your car. Think about what that number actually means. Normal curb height? 6 to 8 inches. When do flood warnings get scary? Around 12 inches. Tesla's building for triple that, which makes you wonder what calculations they've been running that nobody else wants to talk about. Because here's the thing that keeps me up at night when I think about EV adoption. Battery pack replacement costs $9,000 to $12,000. One bad flood can total your vehicle if water gets into the battery enclosure. Insurance companies write off EVs constantly because of this. And guess what? Those losses get baked into everyone's premiums. But if Tesla can prove their packs actually survive real-world flooding, they're not just making a tougher car, they're potentially cutting insurance costs and killing the fear that stops people from buying EVs in the first place. And they're not stopping there. The corrosion protection goes deeper than any budget car has a right to. Advanced coatings on underbody parts, suspension points, even the fasteners. Salt spray testing rated over 1,500 hours when most economy cars give up around 500. In real life, that's 5 to 8 extra years in Minnesota winters, or Michigan roads, or anywhere salt touches metal. You know what that means? Your bolts don't seize. Your brake lines don't crack. Your suspension doesn't rattle apart at 150,000 miles like it's giving up on life. I've watched too many good cars become rolling nightmares because nobody wanted to spend an extra $200 on proper coatings during manufacturing. But here's where it gets clever. Tesla's using aluminum construction and cutting 150 to 250 pounds versus steel-heavy competitors. That's not just about efficiency. Every pound you remove is less stress grinding away at suspension components for the next decade. And they've designed drainage paths so water doesn't just sit there, rotting your frame from the inside out. It's the kind of detail that only makes sense if you're designing for people who'll still be driving this thing in 2040. Which brings me to the part that's making enthusiasts lose their minds. Tesla's making the Model 2 Senior Edition slower, softer, less aggressive. And honestly, I think it's brilliant. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Most people don't care about 0 to 60 times. They care about not feeling beaten up after driving to the grocery store. Studies show drivers over 55 are way more sensitive to those jolts from rough pavement and potholes. Even small impacts cause real discomfort on longer drives. Sports suspensions that reviewers praise, they amplify exactly the punishment older drivers are trying to avoid. So Tesla's softening the springs and retuning the dampers for speeds under 45 miles per hour, because guess what? 80% of trips for people over 60 happen at city speeds under 12 miles. By reducing that low-speed harshness by just 15 to 20%, they can make every single drive less exhausting. You're not getting a boat that wallows through corners. You're getting a car that doesn't turn expansion joints into a personal attack. And they can do this because of that floor-mounted battery pack. Center of gravity around 18 inches off the ground. That lets them soften everything without the car falling over in turns, like a top-heavy crossover. Other automakers are stuck building stiff, harsh rides just to keep their tall vehicles from tipping. But the software layer is where this gets really interesting to me. Tesla's adding low-speed stability modes that smooth out throttle response. Because electric motors hit you with hundreds of pound-feet instantly, which is amazing on a highway on-ramp and absolutely terrifying when you're trying to ease into a parking spot. Under 10 miles per hour, the Senior Edition dials back that aggression, makes takeoffs gentle, keeps Grandma from accidentally launching through her garage wall. Same thing with regenerative braking. One-pedal driving is great once you learn it, but it feels bizarre and unpredictable if you're coming from 40 years of normal cars. So they're softening the regen below 20 miles per hour. Let the car coast naturally unless you actually hit the brake. Small change, huge difference in confidence. And this is what frustrates me about the entire car industry. If Tesla can tune different modes for different people, why isn't everyone doing this? Why are we forcing 70-year-olds to adapt to aggressive setups designed for automotive journalists who test cars for 3 days and never think about long-term comfort? The answer is, nobody's been willing to admit that one-size-fits-all performance tuning is failing massive chunks of the market. Now let's talk about the screen, because this is where things get quietly dangerous. Modern dashboards have become these overwhelming light shows, bright, busy, complicated, and for older drivers that's not just annoying, it's genuinely risky. Your eyes change as you age, reaction time slows, contrast sensitivity drops. Reading small text up close gets harder even with glasses. Tesla's finally acknowledging this instead of pretending everyone has 20-year-old vision. High contrast display mode, bigger text, clearer spacing, colors designed to actually work in bright sun and low light. Research shows that increasing font size by 20 to 30% cuts glance time by half a second. Sounds tiny, right? At 60 miles per hour, half a second is 44 feet. That's the distance between seeing a hazard and starting to brake. That's often the difference between a close call and a crash. Every automaker knows this data. Most ignore it because pretty minimalist screens win design awards. The brightness tuning matters too. A lot of touchscreens push 800 nits, which causes glare and eye strain at night. Tesla's capping brightness smarter after sunset while keeping contrast sharp. You can still read everything. Your eyes just aren't being assaulted. Backup cameras are getting cleaned up too. Less visual clutter, clearer depth cues, actual distance measurements in feet. At parking speeds, knowing if something's 2 feet away versus 5 feet away is infinitely more useful than some stylized 3D graphic your brain has to decode. Driver alerts trigger earlier and more gradually. Extra half-second of warning at 45 miles per hour adds 30 feet of stopping distance when your reactions aren't quite as sharp as they used to be. And maybe most importantly, they're reducing cognitive load. Essential controls surface faster. Climate, defrost, lights, wipers. Fewer taps to get to what you need. Going from 3 taps to 1 might sound minor, but every extra tap is a moment your attention isn't on the road where it needs to be. Step back and look at the bigger picture here. Tesla's not chasing headlines. They're targeting the hidden costs that destroy ownership value. Rust that makes cars unsafe after a decade. Uncomfortable rides that make people hate driving. Complex interfaces that increase accident risk. Traditional automakers know all this exists. They treat it as acceptable because fixing it doesn't generate showroom buzz or improve review scores. Tesla's treating these as problems worth solving because the Senior Edition isn't just about older buyers. It's about proving you can build a budget EV that outlasts competitors by years, costs less to insure, and needs fewer repairs over 200,000 miles. If they pull this off, what happens to resale values? What happens when insurance companies start cutting premiums for vehicles with real durability data? What happens when people realize they can drive the same car for 15 years instead of cycling through new? This is where real disruption lives. Not in acceleration times that matter for 10 seconds, not in range numbers exceeding what most people ever need, but in the total cost and experience of ownership over a vehicle's entire useful life. Tesla's betting that once you look past the marketing noise, what people actually value is a car that just works, stays comfortable, and doesn't fall apart. And honestly, I think they might be right. So here's what Tesla figured out that everyone else missed. The real weakness in the EV market isn't range or charging. It's that nobody's building electric cars people want to own for 15 years. Traditional automakers design for lease cycles and planned obsolescence. Tesla just engineered a vehicle to outlast everything in its price range while staying comfortable and usable the entire time. That's why Elon chose durability over speed, simplicity over complexity. The real competition isn't 0 to 60 times, it's total cost of ownership over 2 decades. If the Model 2 Senior Edition proves a budget EV can survive 200,000 miles while maintaining ride comfort and interface clarity, it forces every automaker to answer one question. Why are your cars falling apart at 100,000 miles? What matters more to you, impressive specs or a car that still feels solid in 2040? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this analysis added value, hit that like button and subscribe to Tesla Zone for deeper dives into the engineering decisions reshaping affordable transportation. Turn on notifications because we're tracking Tesla's manufacturing timeline and the industry response as this strategy unfolds. The disruption is just beginning, and you'll want to see what happens next.